Sorry, volume was down. Okay, so thank you for joining me for today's live stream. I had to put the noise suppression filter on because there's some construction going on. So I want to make sure that you're able to hear me and not have any interruptions. I did turn that filter back on for today. Thank you. We have six fabulous stories yet again. These are the main headlines, but this bottom one I'm particularly excited to talk to you about, the Cosm Theaters story. So yes, happy Thursday. We're going for 3 live streams this week, and I suspect we will make it. My plan is tomorrow to have another live stream to talk about an update on Supergirl, because I think all eyes are on that, of course. Hey, Goblin Breath. Thanks for the gift, Bubbles. I appreciate it. Hey, Carlos. The live stream tomorrow, yes, it'll be earlier tomorrow. It'll probably be at around 1 o'clock or something. I wish this was a little bit earlier. I'm sorry. I was filming my spoiler review, which will go up later this evening for Supergirl. I'm glad you like my shirt, Night in Paris. I like your name. Yes, I love these AFRM shirts. I buy a ton of shirts there. They're great. They're inexpensive. They're fun, and they have thumb holes. I mean, what else could I ask for? Okay. Thanks, Paul. That's very generous of you. I really appreciate it. Happy Thursday to you too, #pie. Alrighty, let's get started. Please keep your questions and comments to the story at hand. But then today, I don't have anywhere to be today, so I will be able to do the 10 minutes of Ask Me Anything at the end of the stream. Okay. Story number 1. Boop. All right, let's see here. Can I make it so I can see? Yes, there we go. Yes, so good. I can see. Okay. All right. So, DC. Here we go again when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes scores. I saw somebody tweet a funny thing where they had Joker in The Dark Knight in the interrogation scene where Heath Ledger's Joker is like, you have nothing that you can do to use against him. And I thought it was pretty funny because, DC fans, of course, have been here before. But James Gunn has not when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes scores. And so that's one of the main things we're going to talk about in this segment. Okay, so what's interesting to me, though, is that for all the not-so-great Rotten Tomatoes scores, Batman v Superman is actually the only movie that I've listed here, besides Supergirl, that has a Rotten Tomato. I mean, some of them are not what you would like. They're a little low, but they still all qualify as freshies. And of course, Batman v Superman is the movie that caused the Snyderverse to implode. But the difference is that fans really loved Batman v Superman. At least some of us did. Myself included. My stupid noise suppression thing probably took that out. But yeah, I really liked it. A lot of us fought for that movie. And I'm not sure if anyone's going to fight for Supergirl, although I see you, Wanda's attorney. I think that it might be like a Birds of Prey situation where we'll talk about that in a moment. But yes, I don't think that Supergirl is a Batman v Superman type of movie. It's not going to rally that kind of support. So yes, but DC, it's been rough for DC. Batman v Superman ended up coming in at 28% on Rotten Tomatoes. The only rotten movie on this list that we're discussing. The Flash was at 63% Rotten Tomatoes, still fresh. Which James Gunn, I liked The Flash too, to be honest with you. And James Gunn really sung its praises. So did Tom Cruise. And then the Batman from Matt Reeves only managed an 85. Interestingly enough, who could have any problem with the Batman? But some critics did. Let's talk about critics versus fans. So there's a bit of a disconnect. I agree there is, in that a lot of critics, particularly the older critics, and some of the more alternative, like film Twitter critics, from that group, don't read comics, don't care about comics, don't take comics seriously. So that's where a little bit of the discrepancy comes from. Same for video games, to be fair, to be totally fair. Although I think like even some video game fans admitted the last Super Mario wasn't great. But you know, most critics, I would say, probably don't read comic books for fun. You know, I do. I love comic books. I actually wrote in my Father's Day, my card to my father for Father's Day. I said, thanks for introducing me to movies and comic books. You changed my life profoundly. Although not to, you know, I want to make sure I bring my mom into that. My mom really shaped the way that I look and speak about those things. Because he turned my mom into a movie fan. He couldn't get her into comics, but he, you know, those elements. But yeah, so I think there is a disconnect with people not understanding the source material. And you know, sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. You know, because not a ton of people read comics, but that's the thing. DC has more of a hurdle because DC characters are better known by the general public, thanks to years of television shows and animation, etc. So your average normie, your casual moviegoer and consumer, might not read comics, but has a lot more of a stronger idea as to who Batman and even Supergirl are than they would say some of the Marvel characters that they've had. So it's a difference. It's a tougher. It makes things a little bit harder for DC, but at the same time they have a built-in audience more so. All right, so female superhero movies, a little bit of a disjoint here, and it's a similar problem to the one that Star Wars has faced. And that's that as you try to, so don't want to be insulting. So this has long been a problem even in comic books, right? So comic books have tried to appeal to certain female readers and like, let's call it an alternative group, you know, to the regular fans and for comic books. So, you know, those comics haven't usually performed as well. Manga is in a different space. So that's that's different. Manga and anime, which has done very well with alternative groups, you know. But, you know, it's been hard to bring in female and LGBTQ fans into comic books as a whole. They like Batman and X-Men. I like Batman and X-Men. But, you know, in the broader space, it's been a little bit more challenging. So comic books have suffered with this. Star Wars has suffered with this. And now DC is suffering with it, where you create something where this other group likes it, but everybody else hates it. So the goal is to create something that everybody likes. That's where you make your money. That's the sweet spot. And the trick is to bring in new viewers without alienating the original viewers. That's how you grow your audience instead of swamping it out. And so, you know, it continues to be an issue. So they'll find a path. I believe they'll find a path. But yes, so Birds of Prey, Black Widow, and the Marvels, you can see not great scores, all stronger than Supergirl. I don't think Supergirl will go up, by the way. I think it'll continue to fall. I think there's blood in the water. I think there's very few people supporting the movie. And so I think anyone who's giving a fresh review to Supergirl is either still supportive of James Gunn or is supporting Millie Alcock. I mean, I know some people feel very bad, although I think Millie Alcock feels bad she's in this movie. You know, I don't have very much sympathy for her. I think she caused a lot of the problems with this film. And I think that she didn't advocate for herself or the project when she was in it. If you look at someone like Tom Hiddleston has been such a wonderful steward of Loki as a character. He has taken that character very seriously. And by the way, made that character popular with female and LGBTQ fans as well. So he hit that sweet spot. So I think it's really, really important that actors, if they're going to take on these characters, they really understand what they're getting into and they respect the fans. And, you know, they take it seriously because they're literally the face of the project. So Millie Alcock, you know, feels like she can just walk away from this, and I think she's mistaken. You know, I'd be like, whether you like it or not, you're going to be Supergirl forever, and you have to decide if that's a positive or a negative thing. So yes, a number of actors take their characters very seriously. I think the ones who are the most successful do that. I wish Margot Robbie took Harley Quinn as seriously as she did Barbie. I don't think Margot Robbie gets Harley Quinn. However, she still has done a lot to help the character. Well, David Ayer did too. I think, it was a mixed bag with Margot Robbie. All right, so I think that these movies skew a little higher because I think you have people watching them, the female-led superhero movies, who I think they're watching them and they don't care about the comics so much as like, I think they're on the same page as the filmmakers. I think they want to turn these characters in the direction that the movie's trying to. So they support it and they advocate it, and to them, they think it's great. Where the rest of us are like, what did you do to that character? So that's a big issue. All right, so James Gunn versus the press. I'll say it now. We're having a little bit of a half a conversation here because we don't know how the movie has performed yet at the box office, and we don't know the audience scores. So we can't fully judge how Supergirl has performed until we get that information. So that's one of the reasons I can't be like, oh, James Gunn has killed DC. I don't know. Maybe he'll get saved by the box office, right? Maybe the audience scores will be better than we expect. So I have to wait to see how those things come in. All right. I mean, sure, we have our inklings, but we have to see for sure. All right. So James Gunn and the press. So James Gunn, and I said this, and I appreciate everyone who brought this up yesterday. I pointed out that James Gunn has really benefited from having a strong relationship with the press when he was at Marvel. The press loved this guy to the point that not only would James Gunn fight with me, but other members of the press would jump in to defend him against me, fighting against another member of the press because they were like, no, not James Gunn. That was nuts to me. I was like, wow, this guy has really entranced members of the press. And I think that he did that by convincing a lot of them that he was just like them. He was like, man, if you were going to make a movie, you'd be me. And I think that they really backed him for that, and would never call him out on the things that he did. Like, even when he had a success, you'd be like, well, I can see I always did. I'd be like, there's a glimmer of a problem there. Thanks, X-Men superfan. Or I'd be like, or this is going to, like, it's a good movie, but he doesn't know how to handle female characters. He's gotten better at it. But all those things, like he was enjoying a very nice relationship where it was all positive, no negative. Like they wouldn't call him out on anything. But when he was giving me a problem. He was like misrepresenting things. And I was saying, watch what I said James Gunn will say anything in the moment. And sometimes he even believes it, but it's very rarely true. And Wonder Woman fans, which we're going to talk about, have found that out in spades. And he'll sometimes lie and then later he'll say, well, he was protecting a spoiler. And you'll be like, yeah, but at the same time, you branded someone a liar, right? And so the reason I said someone and not me is because he started to do that to the rest of the press. So when he got the head of DC, for some reason, he got like just absolutely rabid in terms of clamping down on spoilers. And he wanted to maintain the same back and forth relationship with fans that he had when he was at Marvel. But he doesn't seem or didn't realize that DC is a very different space. So he started to get himself into a lot of trouble, right? And also fans developed a very bad habit of asking him directly to say if a story was true or not. And he got sucked into that, which he shouldn't have allowed himself to do. No, there's never a Marvel story that's run and people go to Kevin Feige and say, Kevin, is this true? So I think that really ended up getting him in trouble. So he started to call out really big news organizations and reporters. Deadline, etc. Like it was very difficult. Like he really was aggressive. And I said at the time, this is going to come back to bite him in the butt because he doesn't realize that the press have been protecting him. And sure enough, after all that, the first chance they got, they came down hard. They came down really, really hard on him with Supergirl. And they're assigning the blame to him. They could have said it was Craig Gillespie's fault. They could have said it was Ana Nogueira's fault. Like when Birds of Prey came out, we were all like, Christina Hodson, get away from us. But no, everybody's like, hey, James Gunn. And it's not only because of how aggressive he was at the press, but I think because of his extreme ownership of DC. You know, like he really puts himself front and center, more so than anybody else who's running a franchise. So it's like, I guess Patty Jenkins has the same situation, and she sure paid the price too. If you're going to take on all the credit, you're going to get all the blame. And, that's one of the reasons that Hollywood is a team effort, because there's often a flop and everyone's like, not it. And they want to be able to be like, oh, it was that person's fault. So that's a bit of an issue. All right, so Rotten Tomatoes history for James Gunn. All right, so what are you talking about with Snyder Mystic? I think the press hated Zack Snyder, and they were aggressive. It was the opposite situation where the press were, I think, I will admit that Zack Snyder's work certainly had its flaws, but I think that he didn't get anywhere near the credit he should have for the artistry that he brought to it. And why he was so beloved by comic book fans, because he was pretty authentic. I think he treated the source material with respect, etc. Okay. I wouldn't put Taika Waititi in the same group. Taika Waititi just made a really bad movie and the fans turned on him. I think that's something that was there. Okay. So these are the James Gunn scores. Superman at 83. I think you can see them starting to fall out of love with him right there, because I think Superman's a better movie than that, although I know some of you would very much disagree. Peacemaker, this is both seasons combined. That's an insane score for Peacemaker. I mean, granted, when we do reviews, we don't get the whole season, and Peacemaker season 2 really fell apart toward the end, but Peacemaker certainly is enjoyable. But in the 90s, I mean, this was like when everybody was just loving James Gunn, right? Especially after that's true, after he got fired by Marvel, the press became even more protective of him. And they were like, oh, that's so horrible. It was freedom of speech. He didn't mean it. And like, they really rallied behind him. I think that's one of the reasons he even got the DC gig. So look, Creature Commandos at 95%. That's nuts. Although I gave Creature Commandos a fresh tomato as well. This is where the problem of Rotten Tomatoes not having a middle tomato comes in. Like you could eat it, tomato. Because that's what I think Peacemaker and Creature Commandos would both qualify as. Like you wouldn't give them a Rotten Tomato, but they're not 90 percentile projects. All right, then Guardians of the Galaxy, he started to drop a little bit on these, 82. But then this one, the Suicide Squad, 90%. That's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. I would say even the most ardent fan of James Gunn's Suicide Squad would admit it is not worthy of a 90% score on Rotten Tomatoes. That was the movie he made after he was fired at Marvel, and I think the press was just really, really protecting him. And well, not even maybe admittedly doing it, but really felt bad for him. And so even though the box office on that was pretty poor, he was able to explain it away. He's really a lucky SOB, right? So he lucked out with Superman because Marvel had a horrible year. So he could at least point out and say, hey, Superman did better than all 3 Marvel movies. And you're like, that's true. It did. Then he had the Suicide Squad, which came out during the pandemic. So even though the box office wasn't that great, he could say, well, it's not my fault. It was partially a pandemic release. Even though all of us were like, this is not the right guy to run the studio. It's pretty obvious, but he had the right things to point to, I think, to advocate for himself. That's nuts. So it's crazy that the press did that for him, because they don't get any of the benefit. James Gunn, I'm sure, has made tens and tens and tens, if not close to at this point. I would say certainly north of $50 million since he got the DC deal. So that was very nice of them. Okay. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and then Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. 91%. That's when he really broke onto the scene. Milo says, do you usually disagree with most other critics, or is it just Suicide Squad? I don't really pay attention to what other critics say. I mean, I pay attention to the scores and things like that, but I don't, it's hard. I always just want to give my honest opinion, and I can't do that if I'm like checking with everybody else to see what they think. So the only way to do that is to just not care. I give my review, and then I see what the scores are, That's how that's the only way to be, I think, honest. Music Lawyer says, to you, Rotten Tomatoes is a measure of whether or not you might like the movie, not the degree to which you will like it. It's not a grade. I think that that's probably true, but that's not how it's perceived. It's just impossible to see, like, I think, again, because there's no nuance, I think that makes that shifts the scores a little bit. I will tell you, as someone who is a Rotten Tomatoes critic, I at least find it very hard to give a Rotten Tomato, because that's just so aggressive. And I usually play devil's advocate, as many of you know. I'm like, well, I could kind of see where they were coming from, and I get what they were trying to do, and I liked parts of it. So do I really think it's rotten? But, I gave Supergirl a Rotten Tomato. Sometimes you're just like, it's just too clear. Okay. But then, as I said, we have to wait to see how this all hashes out. I can't really make a judgment call until I see what the audience scores are and the box office. That will paint the entire picture. Until then, we only have half of it. Okay, so that's the first story of the day. Any questions or comments here? Theater Kid, I don't score movies. I just, talk about them. I don't like that. I think it's one of the things that made me feel that way is, I'll just be honest with you, IGN gives the score. And I always just, when I am curious about IGN, I just fast forward to see what the score is. So I want you to listen to my whole opinion. Let's see here. And also, we might not always agree. Star Allison, you can't give a low RT score. You only give a fresh or Rotten Tomato, and then, the percentage is how many fresh tomatoes does it have. Let's see here. Nandan says, I have disagreed with critics as often as I have agreed with them. These scores are not that useful. John Carter is an example. That's true. Well, that's why you need to find a critic that you trust, that you believe in, and then you can really kind of get an idea if these movies are worth seeing or not through that person. And I'm honored that a number of you feel that way about me, because I told you John Carter was great. Let's see here. Mystic says, if Man of Tomorrow doesn't make more than Superman, is Gunn out? Well, that's really hard to say. That's very far away. That's next summer. I think, he's going to be in really bad shape if Supergirl and Clayface underperform. And let's see what his presentation looks like at Comic-Con. That's right, Sahib. Toy Story is going to be #1 again, it looks like. NGN8, Metacritic does use scores, but I'm not on Metacritic. Steven says, there are females with long-running solo comics, Catwoman, Wonder Woman, etc. Do you have advice for female lead comic films and TVs going forward? With you just saying that, I mean, Wonder Woman worked out, at least the first movie, really well. But part of me feels maybe female characters would do better in the streaming space. Maybe that would be a better space for them with more nuance. Swifty, what a crazy question. #Pi says, do you think a DC reboot is coming, or will Clayface put the DCU back on track? I have to, again, see how this weekend fleshes out. We're probably going to talk about that in depth next week. But for right now, I did have someone tell me who saw Clayface early that it has really no Easter eggs at all, which is, and really neither does Supergirl, which is, from a business perspective, just so misguided and stupid. It's almost like sometimes James Gunn really is willfully trying not to be Kevin Feige, but not his successes either. And that's the thing. James Gunn doesn't personally like teases for future movies because he's had bad experiences with it, but who cares? It's the right move from a business perspective. Let's see here. Hey, Nico says you should start adding letterbox scores. No, I don't think there's no. I mean, I'm not, that's not a closed system, you know? They might be relevant for Gen Z, but I think movie math includes elements that we know will affect the box office. I haven't quite seen that from Letterboxd just yet. And love to you in Argentina as well. Oh, by the way, anyone in Venezuela, I hope you're safe. That was just shocking what happened in Venezuela yesterday. I thought that was so sad with the earthquake. My mother spent a summer in Venezuela, so she does, and she passed that on to me. I always feel very nice about the people of Venezuela. Dory, I would agree. I think, as I said in my non-spoiler review, I don't think Supergirl feels at all like the comic book character. Let's see here. Swifty says Superman has an average rating of 7.3 on Rotten Tomatoes, and IMDb a 7 out of 10. And IMDb is much more people than Rotten Tomatoes audience. 7's not a horrible score, to be honest with you. I mean, it's not great. I mean, particularly for those are things you can review bomb. So that's one of the reasons I have an issue with them. X-Men Superfan, I would love to see Wonder Woman back in theaters, but I worry about James Gunn's version of the character. After this weekend, after seeing Supergirl, I'm really worried. I think James Gunn's stuff feels not cinematic enough often. Yes, Theater Kid, Wonder Woman is still the sterling example in box office and I think fan reaction when it comes to female superheroes movies. And I want to point out that it was Zack Snyder who was largely responsible for that. Patty Jenkins really needed him to balance her out. My pleasure, Jeffrey. Oh, Nico says that he thinks that Obsession did very well thanks to Letterboxd. That's very possible. That's very, very possible. I'll keep an eye on it, Nico. I do appreciate the suggestion. Hey, Danny. Of course, you can always have a shout out. All right. I think we're ready for the next story. Another DC story. Oh, NGN8 says, do you think Supergirl will go to digital fast? Too early to tell. I'd have to see the second weekend drop. I'd have to. That's right, Poke. Ballerina didn't do well either, the John Wick spinoff, and that was great. I loved Ballerina. Wanda's attorney says, Gunn and Safran say they already know what movie Supergirl is showing up in after Man of Tomorrow. Should they pump the brakes? They shouldn't pump the brakes because they don't want to get fired. So I wish they would give as many teases in the projects as they do in their interviews. Why are teases okay for interviews, but not for the projects themselves? Something to think about. Okay, next story. Thanks, Turkey. That's very sweet to say. Thank you. I wore the Supergirl jacket again for the spoiler review, and that was a little nerve-wracking. I was like, I hope it's as legendary the second time around. I was reluctant to repeat myself, but then also I was like, how can I not wear it if I'm going to do the spoiler review? Okay. Oh, darn it. I got messed up. Hold on. Boop. All right. So, yes, it was announced this morning that Batman, Absolute Batman, is getting an animated series. And some people were like, is this a distraction from how poorly Supergirl is being received? And no, it is not. It's not. Because this is part of Annecy. The Annecy Animation Film Festival is still going, right? Absolute boop. That's funny, Faye. What would an absolute boop be? It'd be like, boop! You know, like hardcore craziness. I'd have to get like cartoon eyes, you know? Okay. So yes, so they actually made a lot of announcements, right? Let's see here. They announced a bunch of stuff. So they have Absolute Batman. That was the one that got all the attention. They're still making that Starfire show. Man, I'd put that right in the trash. I would trash most of these things. I believe that everybody's trying to get another Invincible. Invincible, of course, very successful animated series for Prime Video, competing with the live action shows. It's really found its footing, and it's just doing really, really well. And so I think everybody's kind of hoping that they can have the next one of those. So Starfire, I mean, it's taking forever to make these things. Crypto, why Crypto? Why is James Gunn? I mean, I know he has a dog that's like Crypto, but this is just nuts, man. I mean, like, he's like becoming like just ridiculously obsessed with crypto. I mean, I would love to know if crypto is selling a lot of merch, because I don't see anybody buying anything for crypto. I mean, I know some people think he's cute, but I have not seen anyone go all. He's not like Stitch, right? Mr. Miracle. I am kind of interested in that as an animated series. I hear the word is out of the festival that it's very accurate to the comics, so that would make me very happy. Joker Laugh Riot, his own show, anime style. It better be funny. It's very hard to write for Joker, so if it's not funny, then I'm not going to be very happy about that. What is that? Superpowers, that high school show. I can't believe these things are still happening. They're doing a spin-off of My Adventures with Superman, and now it's My Adventures with Green Lantern, Jessica Cruz. And then also they're bringing back Creature Commandos, believe it or not. What? That is nuts. Nuts. Wouldn't make any of these shows except for Mr. Miracle and Batman. That's really tough. Maybe if Joker was funny. Okay. Now, Absolute Batman was such a big deal when this was announced, it trended top 10 on Twitter this morning. Very big deal. It's an incredible comic. It sold extremely well. Absolute Wonder Woman is also very successful, but I still believe that Absolute Batman is the most successful of the group. This, remember, I don't know if you're a comic book reader or not, but I would say, I wonder how long ago it was at this point, maybe 20 years. But back in the day, the Ultimate line really saved Marvel. Mark Miller was the architect of that. And a lot of the MCU is actually pulled from the Ultimate Universe. The most obvious thing being Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, who was drawn to look that way in the comic. So it was huge, really, really big. Yeah, I don't know where the Harley Quinn show is, Chris. I miss Harley Quinn, although I think the last season was not great. I think they became, it's always the danger with the celebrity couple. They kind of become too attached and don't have their own stories anymore. And I think that kind of happened with Harley and Ivy there. But yeah, so anyway, Absolute for DC has become the same thing. It is not only saving DC Comics, but I would say saving comic books in general. That's how hot the Absolute line is. They have a bunch of Absolute titles. There is not an Absolute Supergirl, which I saw somebody ask. Absolute Gotham City Sirens would be great. They just did a Black Label Gotham City Sirens, which was actually fantastic. I read that. But, I think the only two really good Absolute titles are Batman and Wonder Woman, but there are a whole bunch of other ones as well. So yeah, hugely popular comic, really sells a ton of copies. It's in multiple printings. It's a big deal. And it's very good, by the way. I do recommend that you read it. It's excellent. This and Wonder Woman are great reads. It's been a while since the comic book space has put out anything this good. All right, so we wished for this. We were saying they should do an animated Absolute Batman because that's the only way that you could convincingly adapt the material. So yeah, animation versus live action. Absolute Batman is absolutely nuts. I will say that because it's written by Scott Snyder, who's a really nice guy, but he really can't write women. He's very successful because I think he's cut from the same cloth as Christopher Nolan, but I think he's really bad with female characters. He has some interesting ideas, but I think, Catwoman, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, speaking of the Gotham City Sirens, I think he's not done a great job developing those characters. I mean, I think what he's done with them is interesting, certainly, but I don't think that he's given them to their best advantage. Also, with Barbara Gordon, right? I mean, I think the Barbara Gordon Absolute costume is nuts in a negative way. I'd be like, why do you got to do that to her, man? Why don't you give her a chance? So, but let's see. He's just not huge on female characters, you know. They factor very little into his stories. But I'm happy. Absolute, but it's like interesting because Absolute Wonder Woman is almost entirely female characters, so it's like they're total opposites. All right, so the reason Absolute Batman is so great is because it's just absolutely nuts. Like he's fighting monsters. You know, when they previewed Absolute Joker, who had a little bit of a preview in the last issue, was so scary, just like really terrifying. And they did a great job. Nick Dragotta, we'll talk about him in a moment. He's the artist. But yeah, so really incredible stuff, but it's just so nuts. It's just so insane that it would be too expensive to do in live action. So this is the only way that you could actually do it, I think, successfully. So Scott Snyder is the writer and Nick Dragotta is the artist. I've been a Nick Dragotta fan since a comic book called East and West, or East versus West, something like that. Incredible comic. Not particularly well written, especially as it went on. It kind of lost its way. But Nick Dragotta, I knew he was a superstar artist. So it's really cool to see him kind of finally get his flowers. So he's doing a great job. And he draws most of the issues, I'm happy to report. You know, it's not one of those things where the artist does a couple of issues, then has to take a really long break and he gets replaced where you're like, who the heck is this? They're not as good. But yeah, so I think, by the way, they didn't say where it was going to air. I don't know if it's going to be an HBO show, if it'll be a Prime show, because that's obviously where the current Batman Cape Crusader is. I love Batman Cape Crusader, but nobody else seems to care for it. I think it's a great show. I'm very excited for the new season that comes out in late July. But a lot of fans today were very upset about this news because they wanted to know, where is Wonder Woman? Because James Gunn has been promising that Wonder Woman is coming. Absolute Wonder Woman, this comic is just as successful or close to as successful as Absolute Batman. So fans were pretty annoyed. They were like, why isn't she getting an animated series, right? Like, I think it was frustrating to them. And I have to say, Absolute Wonder Woman, you know, it's funny. Paul says Absolute Wonder Woman is perfect. I do think Absolute Wonder Woman is the better title of the two. I think not only because it's so well written, but I think it has a better understanding of the characters. I do think Adria Arona is playing Wonder Woman. She was a very safe choice. She's a friend of Gunn. After seeing Supergirl, I'm more concerned about her being chosen. I feel like she'll have a similar vibe to Millie Alcock, and that's not very cinematic, and I'm nervous about it. But then, you know, people are just upset. You know, James Gunn has promised that Wonder Woman is coming, and you guys haven't gotten your Paradise Lost television streaming show. You haven't gotten anything about a movie. And now you're not getting an animated series of any kind, absolute or not. So hopefully there's going to be some kind of Wonder Woman announcement at Comic-Con, if not sooner. If he says he's on social media all the time, I would think he sees this. Wonder Woman, by the way, trended top 25 as well today. Okay, any questions or comments about this story? I know you got some comments, X-Men Superfan. That's right, Guy Ty. A lot of Wonder Woman fans found it particularly insulting that Krypto would get a show before Wonder Woman. Oh, thanks, Poke. Do you think this is too much Batman? There's already another animated show. I think that animated show will be canceled. I don't think you'll get a third season of Batman Cape Crusader. And so I think by the time this show comes out and is ready to be released, animation takes a little bit of time. I think it'll be fine. And really, you can't have enough Batman. People love Batman. It's like Spider-Man. You just can't get enough. That's right, Fahad. Gorilla Grodd is also getting a show before Wonder Woman because he's going to be a part of the Jimmy Olsen show. Not even a guest, co-lead. Oh, it will be okay. You stopped reading Marvel Comics? Yeah, Marvel Comics are pretty bad right now. Yeah, X-Men Superfan. Wonder Woman's definitely being treated very poorly, which is weird considering how well she has proven to perform as a character. Paul says, would you cast any big names for Absolute Batman or choose unknowns? You know, it's funny you say that. I would bring in some names, but I would bring in names that mean something to the fans. I would ask Anthony Starr if there's a character he'd be interested in voicing. Perhaps Absolute Joker. But just the idea of me being able to have Anthony Starr on my promotional campaign and go to conventions and all the behind the scenes. You know, I think Invincible is a good example of casting talent. You know, they go for talent that's going to excite their audience, which I think is great. Chico says, can you explain the idea of Absolute in the DC? Is it in DC's new Elseworlds? No. And it is an Elseworld story, but it's more like, it's just, I would say it's like extreme. It's like extreme Batman. Extreme Wonder Woman, because it's a lot more violent. It's a lot more horror based. You know, that's interesting. Horror is, of course, extremely popular right now. And I definitely think that Absolute is rooted in horror, more perhaps so than anything else. Like they turned Green Arrow into a serial killer. Right? Like what's happening? Oh, is it, you say metal, Amara? I know that Scott Snyder likes metal because he made his Joker like a metal character too. X-Men Superfans says, every time they give Wonder Woman a chance to prove herself, she does. Right? Very frustrating. And then hashtag says, I'm nervous about how other superhero franchises like X-Men will be handled, especially X-Men, because it's proudly female-centric. Yeah, I'm very nervous about that. But we can't really talk about that until we see a little movie that's coming out this summer. And then we can really go to town. Swifty, it's tough for female heroes. You know, you got to get really good talent to take care of them. And then Stasis says, do you think Marvel's Midnight lineup later this year is going to help them with Absolute fans? No, because the point is that it's major characters that are getting this treatment. And I think that's a big part of it. All right, let's go to the next story of the day. We've only done 2 stories. Okay. Story number 3. Boop. Oh, a lot to go over here. All right, so we were just talking about Grand Theft Auto 6 the other day. We thought there might be a trailer. There's been a lot of talk about how there hasn't even been a new trailer. You know, people thought once the game went on pre-sale that they'd release a new trailer to get people even more excited. But I think they feel people are pretty excited as it is. But they also kind of made people angry. So first off, digital pre-orders. How's that work? Well, the reason you would pre-order a digital game is because they're going to give you the chance to start downloading it, and it's apparently a significant size of a file, but that you can start downloading it a week in advance. So that means on November 19th, when this game is ready to play, you can just press play. You know, you won't have to wait for it to download. You won't have to worry about things freezing and stuff like that. You know, everything should work out for you. Hopefully, I hope they have a lot of servers ready to go. But that's another thing. If enough people pre-order digitally, they'll have a good idea of how many servers they need to have operational because they'll know what it's going to be like, how many people are going to go online. All right, so Grand Theft Auto 5, which came out over 10 years ago, made $1 billion in just 3 days. That's pretty sweet, and at a lower price point, no less. And it has made $10 billion overall in its lifetime. That's incredible. No wonder they were willing to spend like $2 billion on this new game. That is an incredible source of revenue. I'm still shocked that Hollywood has not come a-calling. Maybe they have. And Rockstar just doesn't want to work with them. That's possible. So, but there was some controversy with the announcement of the pre-orders, and we finally got some details about the game. So one of the controversies was Ultimate versus Standard. The Ultimate version is $100 and the Standard version is $80. Now, everybody got into a big fight about this, right? So, like, for instance, Jeremiah says $80 is the full game, $100 is a director's cut or a 2-disc edition. I disagreed with that and got into a fight with people online yesterday. I said it's pretty clear that the full game is $100, but they have given you a budget discount version if you only want to spend $80. I feel that the $80 version only exists so you don't get too angry about the $100 price point. So like, which is the game? You know, like some people claim, you know, Ultimate Edition is, because they're calling it Ultimate Edition. They're like, oh, it's just extras. That's just extras. It's not the full game. I think this is just a psychological tactic to show you an $80 price point so you don't get too angry about the $100 price point. I would almost guarantee you that if you get the $80 game, you will not feel that you have the full game when you get it. I think you're going to tell yourself now it's okay, but I think as soon as you're walking around in the game, you'll be like, you know, it was just $20. Danny said, oh, Danny, you're back. Danny said you can just upgrade for $20 within the game. So that's good. And I bet you a lot of people are going to do that. And the reason $100 was such a big deal was because people were worried this would become the new price point for games. You know, games are just getting more and more expensive. But I think when you think about what they're providing you and what they're spending to make the game, I think it seems like a very fair price, right? I mean, I think it seems like a reasonable price. So exploring the world, I think that Grand Theft Auto is a unique situation because to me, I played Grand Theft Auto back in the day. Grand Theft Auto is all about exploring the world, interacting with the environment, right? So sure, there's missions, but I think a lot of it is look what I can do. I can go hang out in Vice City. But you won't be able to do that if you don't have the Ultimate Edition. So to me, you're not getting the full Grand Theft Auto experience if you don't pay for the Ultimate Edition. The Ultimate Edition includes all of the customizations from clothes to hair to tattoos to vehicles to weapons. But not only that you can get them, but that you can go shopping for them. I'm sure that's going to be an awesome experience. So you definitely going to want to have that. And apparently there's a couple of missions behind the paywall as well. Raphael wants to add that that's the same for almost all games. AAA games have a standard and a deluxe edition. Well, that's good, you know, and Ms. J says, as a gamer, the $80 is the main game. The Ultimate just gives you the extra perks. But again, you're not going to get the Grand Theft Auto experience. You know, I really feel that Grand Theft Auto is about walking around and exploring, and you're going to find everything's closed to you if you haven't paid for that Ultimate Edition. Okay, then so the price was one big controversy, but what was even bigger was no physical disc. They said you will be able to buy a box, but inside that box, instead of there being a disc, there will just be a paper with a download code on it. So people were pretty upset about that, particularly, apparently a lot of video gamers are still physical media collectors, you know, more so it seems than even the DVD space. So why are some reasons that they would not have a physical disc? Cost of production. It costs a lot of money to churn, and they've already spent billions of dollars to make this game. They're like, man, now we got to like print a disc and we got to make a box and ship it out, all that expense instead of just downloading it. Then I saw someone bring up an excellent point of leaks. If you want to be able to buy a game, a physical copy of the game the day that it comes out, it has to ship in advance and be stocked in the store a couple of days early. So there is no way, especially for a hot game like Grand Theft Auto 6, that some employee or someone who's delivering the games doesn't sneak in there and snag one. So that to me is like right there why you wouldn't want to have a physical disc. Just the problem being that, you know, I guess it would be okay if like you didn't have to have it the day the game started, but that seems like a pretty significant problem. Then resale and borrowing. That to me is another reason not to have physical discs. And I understand this as well. If you can buy a physical disc, when you're done with it, you can sell it to somebody, right? You can sell it resale. You can sell it before you play it. If the game is something that sells out, I mean, it can't now, I don't think, because of resale codes. They can just give as many codes out as they want. But if there's a physical copy, there's only a finite number because they can only produce so many. And then if people really want it, then you can scalp it. So as you guys are saying, eBay scalpers. So that's a concern as well. All right, then the other problem though is that some stores got so upset about this, they said they weren't going to carry the game. And I can understand where they're coming from. If this is the future of video gaming, they're going to go out of business. You don't need a physical store anymore. They'll become like a record store. I mean, there's still a couple of boutique record stores where you can buy a physical copy of a record, or I don't even know if they even make CDs anymore. But, everything's done digitally. And so just like comic book stores have kind of gone out of business, video game stores could be facing the same future. So they're saying, we're not going to carry Grand Theft Auto 6, right? I bet they cave. I'd be like, you want a box with a piece of paper in it? Come on, come over here. I think they have to be really careful. They don't have to make, as I told you, my grandfather said, it's one thing to get hit by an oncoming train, but you don't need to run toward it. Okay. Then I saw a rumor that potentially they would release discs a few months later, once the game's already kind of gone where it needs to go. And so, they would launch okay, but then maybe a couple of months later, maybe even just a month later, you'd be able to get a physical disc. But, they wouldn't send discs to people who'd made a purchase in advance. You'd have to wait to get the game to get that physical copy. So if you want to own it, I guess they could find a way to make you pay for it twice. Now, speaking of upsell, I was speaking to someone I know who's really in the video game space, and they brought up a really good point. And they said, how about an online version? Right now, Grand Theft Auto 6 is a single-player game. You play it yourself. You run around Vice City by yourself. But Grand Theft Auto 5 started the exact same way, but this person pointed out to me that it eventually went online, which means you could play with other people. It became an online experience where you could interact with other people within Vice City. And that to me is what Grand Theft Auto is all about. That in addition to, so they've already confirmed it online. That's great. So that's going to come down a little bit down the line, and I'm sure there will be an additional charge for that. Some people might say maybe there won't be an additional charge, but I think there will be. It might be something small, but it might be like, give me an extra $20, right? That's what I would do. We'll see how long it takes, and we'll see what the charge is. But that is going to be a really big deal. Also, this person pointed out to me that that's what caused Grand Theft Auto to sell so well. And maybe that's when the disc will come out, when the online version is available, because then they'll switch to wanting to make money off of the online. Mystic says it'll be a subscription. Oh, wow. Paul says it brings in $500 million a year. Wow, that's incredible. Wow, move over, Netflix. That's amazing. That's really incredible. So 230 million copies have been sold in total for Grand Theft Auto 5. And as I pointed out earlier in the stream, it has brought in $10 billion. That's incredible. I can't believe they get you to subscribe to a game. Although I subscribe to Adobe. I got to pay $22. I think it's actually $25 a month at this point for each app. I got to pay $25 for Photoshop every month and for Premiere Pro. I think that's insane. But, I too am like, can't I just buy it? But then I do get the upgrades when the upgrades are ready. So I guess it works out okay. Well, I'm going to be paying Adobe for life, man. All right, any questions or comments about this story before we move on to the next stories of the day? Danny says that Grand Theft Auto is the second best-selling video game ever, second only to Minecraft. And look how well Minecraft did as a movie, baby. Paul says, what lessons do you think Hollywood needs to learn from Rockstar and Grand Theft Auto? Well, I think they learned about streaming services, about having you have a subscription. Fahad, I won't play it, but I will watch the cutscenes. And I got to tell you, I showed my mother the trailer for Grand Theft Auto 6. Because my mom really is very good at, she really is really on top of things. But she's not into video games like I'm not into video games. And I was like, look at this trailer. This is such a big launch that movies are avoiding this release date. Companies are closing. because too many people are scheduled to take off to play it. So my mom looked at the trailer that they had, the last trailer, the longer one, and she was like, that's incredible animation. It looks real. And I said, I have to watch the cutscenes to review this as a movie. I said, you want to watch it with me? And she was like, yeah, I do. And I was like, Grand Theft Auto is coming along, baby. So we're going to sit down and watch Grand Theft Auto together. I hope she's willing to do it on a timely basis. That's the only hiccup that we might run into. Mystic, I don't really know anybody who plays video games. No. Raphael says the physical disc debate is a thing gamers really don't care about. Only a small portion who buy physical. Most use a platform like Steam or Epic. Yeah, I gotta say, I liked having physical copies of movies, but it takes up a lot of space, and you really actually never watch them. So I only like only having physical copies of holiday movies. Faye says, you don't think my parents watch a lot of crazy stuff. Let me tell you a story. I remember, I forget which movie it was, but we went to see a pretty gross movie when I was pretty little. And I was like, I would like to leave the theater, please. So my mom had my dad take us out because she's like, I want to finish this movie. So she watched the rest of it, and my dad took us to the back of the multiplex. We were going in New Jersey. And my dad watched the rest of the movie through the doors at the back of the theater. And we were like, don't watch that. It's too gross. Don't do it. My dad was like, I want to see what happens too. But, so my mom watched Euphoria. I didn't even watch Euphoria. My mom loved what was that Emma Stone movie? Poor Things. My mom loved Poor Things. She was like, I don't know what's wrong with you, Grace, but that was a great movie. Mama Randolph is awesome. Thank you, Faye. Let's see. All right, I think we're ready for the next story. Okay, all right. Boop. Okay, so that's right. I can't believe it. Eddie Murphy finally got his wish came true. Talk about fairy tales. He finally got his wish granted by DreamWorks and now Universal, and then he's getting his Donkey spin-off movie. So Shrek 5 is hitting theaters summer 2027. Donkey, huge part of the promotional campaign already. And now, sure enough, the Donkey movie is coming out summer 2028. They said some pretty crazy stuff on the social media tweet. I was like, woo, if they handed me that to tweet, I can't even say it out loud. But they're really leaning into like a certain kind of like, it's interesting. I wonder, what the movie's going to be like, what kind of humor it's going to have. It'll be very interesting indeed. Let's just say they seem to kind of play into stereotypes and stuff like that. And I'm not even sure how the community would feel about it. So we'll see. So yes, so Puss in Boots is extremely successful. Well, not extremely successful, but certainly appreciated. Puss in Boots, those movies, they don't make Shrek money, but they made enough money that they brought back Shrek. So that's good. So yes, we're at least hoping that it will be the level of the Puss in Boots films. So Eddie Murphy, of course, has long requested a Donkey movie. He's been talking about it for a very long time. I think even before they did Puss in Boots, he really wanted his Donkey spin-off movie. So he's been talking about it for so long, but he finally got it. And it was revealed today that it will be an origin story, which I think is going to be interesting. How did Donkey become Donkey? How did he become the character that we all know and love today? So that'll be interesting. I guess, especially, Donkey, does he come from any particular fairy tales? We'll have to see how that all works out. And then I think, to me, what would be key for the success of this film is what other fairy tales are they going to loop in? For instance, the second Puss in Boots did very well because they did Goldilocks and her three bears with Florence Pugh, pew pew pew, voicing Goldilocks. That was great, and so I think different characters are extremely important. Ugly Duckling would be fun, but I think you got to get some human fairy tale characters in there to really kind of make it work. And really, I think, you want a donkey movie, but I think his supporting cast is going to be crucial to the success of the film. And it'll be interesting because it's going to be a prequel. So you couldn't really part of me would be like, bring in Gingerbread Man, but that would be hard. Nico says Donkey is only funny as a sidekick next to Shrek with his jokes bouncing off of Shrek. Well, yeah, it would be hard to, Donkey's whole bit is that he's annoying, right? So who is he going to annoy if he's the lead, right? You don't want him to annoy the audience. But yeah, so that'll be interesting. So, there isn't too much to say about this just yet, but that's how I feel. I feel like it's going to be very key as to who the other fairy tale characters are, and I hope it's funny. And I'll be curious to see, if they, what they decide to do in terms of the story. Any questions or comments about this? Oh, Mystic says it's like making an Olaf movie. That's an interesting comparison. We don't even know if Donkey can support a whole movie. But I think if Puss in Boots can, why can't Donkey? That's right, VTV Psycho. Donkey is the funny man, so they need to create another comedic duo for someone to play off of him. Your little brother Gabriel, I would love a Frozone movie, or at least give Frozone more to do. And I'd love to meet the rest of his family. Frozone's wife, they had even designed her, but they ended up not using her. I hope they do that in Incredibles 3. That's right, Mystic. People really like cats. A lot of people have cats. Not a lot of people have donkeys. Brady, I'm not sure what you're even talking about there. And Steven says, can they parody Wicked? I think you can parody anything. I think that's the rule, because if it's a joke, that's how Scary Movie gets away with it. And Rodney, they haven't talked about the animation style either. People aren't too happy with the Puss in Boots animation style, even though, of course, Spider-Verse adopted it. And they aren't too happy with the new Shrek look either. And Nico, it is very close to Shrek 5. Just a year apart is insane. So let's see if it works. All right, let's get to I think we're ready for the next. Any other questions about this? Kyle says that the movie should focus on Donkey starting. Oh, that's right. Donkey really does love waffles. And that was the tweet that they made. Oh, that's a funny idea as well, Ram, to do a princess team-up movie, but just let Shrek do it if Disney won't do it. That's a very good idea. And Caleb, I too am a little worried about Eddie Murphy these days. I think that he's made mostly streaming movies, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think they've been very good. I don't think that the new Axel Foley movie or his Coming to America 2, while they were fine for streaming films, I don't think any of them connected the way they should have. Oh, that's right, Sahib. Wicked is a Universal movie, so yes, of course they can do that. Oh, Hercules is a good choice, but he's not a fairy tale. He's Greek mythology, but that's a funny idea. Nico, I think Donkey might be funny in Spanish. I believe that Eugenio Derbez voices Donkey in the Spanish language versions, and I'm a big Eugenio Derbez fan. I think that's one of the things that helped make Eugenio Derbez famous. I love Eugenio Derbez. Where is Eugenio Derbez? I think he had a little bit of a scandal. I love that guy. Okay, next story of the day. All right, boop. All right, James Bond. So, okay, it's official. Not only will they be getting close to casting Bond at the end of this summer, but they have already begun having initial auditions. So any rumors you've been hearing might very well be true, because apparently they have been testing James Bond actors. And so they've already reached the finalist stage. And they said, rumor has it, because the trades were willing to report this, that Denis Villeneuve, the director, has been personally calling up his finalists and telling them to prepare their final auditions for August. Ooh, we're getting close to James Bond, baby. This is very exciting news. Now, there's some discrepancy as to rumors as to how many people will be in the final round. One source apparently said 5 to 7 actors. Another said maybe in the teens. So you could have anywhere, so under 20. But that means a lot of people must have auditioned for this if that's the final round. You know, they must have seen a ton of people, to be able to whittle it down and still have so many people left to test. Now, Amy Pascal and David Heyman are, of course, the producers, which I'm very excited about. I think we're all very excited about it. I think they're a great choice. I think, I think that's one of the things that made us feel good about this upcoming movie. With the broccoli stepping back, I think that, Amy Pascal did a great job helping to produce Barbie and Spider-Man and so many great things. And David Heyman, of course, has done a wonderful job with Harry Potter. So I think that's pretty good. Now, of course, the big question is, what's going to happen with James Bond? Who are we getting? What will be the age of James Bond? Are they going to go young or old? And then what will be the ethnicity, right? Will they stick with a white middle-aged James Bond, or will they play around with it a little bit? I think that's what everybody's very curious to see. I've told you before, I think the best way to diversify Bond is to increase the CIA Felix role. And I think that, make him more of a co-lead, and then he could potentially have his own spin-off movies down the line. But that's really the way I think that would work best, to be honest with you. I know some people are saying Callum Turner. I think Callum Turner couldn't be a worse choice for the role. Just couldn't be a worse choice. I mean, let's see, but I think he'd be really bad. However, he does look a lot like the character. Well, I'm sure the actor who actually is the model for this James Bond would be annoyed. But Callum Turner does look a little bit like this. So yes, 007 First Light. This is a video game that came out just a couple of months ago. Very good reviews. People really liked this. They thought it was very good. And it sold pretty well. Not when you think of Grand Theft Auto numbers. Right? So 1.5 million copies were sold in the first 24 hours, but that's only $150 million worth. And of course, any movie would be, I guess that would be good for the first opening weekend, but obviously they want to make a lot more money than that in the long run. So, but I do think the game is so popular that I do feel it can't help but influence the new movie. Because to a lot of people, particularly younger viewers, and while James Bond is in a tough spot because it has older fans that it needs to hold on to, but those fans aren't going to be able to sustain the franchise going forward into the future. So it must add new fans. It's the same problem that we're seeing with Star Wars and DC, et cetera, right? How do you keep something relevant? But we'll see, but a lot of younger people really like First Light and think it's really, really good. So to them, this is James Bond. But I will say, what really bothers me about this is that he's not wearing a suit. I could get behind James Bond being like younger in his 20s. I could get behind a whole bunch of different things they might be able to do. But James Bond always wears a suit. If he's going to run around like this, he's just any other action hero, in my opinion. And that to me is a problem. It doesn't always have to be a tuxedo deck officer. I'll take just a regular suit. But he's got to be wearing a sharp suit. I mean, I guess it would be harder for him to blend in. They'd be like, I'm pretty sure Bond's that dude in a suit. Like it was Jacob Elordi. I think it's that 7-foot tall guy in a suit. Pretty easy to spot. Oh, that's right, Rodney. He does look very Ethan Hunt or Jason Bourne. Kay Walton, I haven't heard anything about rumored candidates. All right, let's see. I did watch the trailer for First Light. I showed this trailer to my mom after Grand Theft Auto, and we both agreed the graphics looked like such crap compared to Grand Theft Auto. It was tough to watch. So Grand Theft Auto is really going to set the bar high. Okay. Any questions about this before we go to our final story of the day? I love Josh O'Connor, but he'd be a better Bond than Callum Turner to me, but I don't think he'd be a good Bond. Tiana Taylor, I think, just signed on for something pretty big. I forget what it is. My favorite Bond, Paul, it's definitely Daniel Craig for Casino Royale. That's the best Bond movie ever made. Although I've come to appreciate Skyfall, even though he goes full Home Alone at the end of the movie. Not Tom Holland. Tom Holland's too nice to be James Bond. He's too sweet. Hashtag says, I have a feeling it'll be Callum who gets the role, sadly, because he's also book accurate and he'll go viral. No, he's horrible. He's Mr. Dua Lipa. I don't need no house husband as James Bond. Let's see here. Adam Sphere, I don't know what the new pitch is. I mean, this is a very talented group of creators. I'm sure they have. I don't think Denis Villeneuve, Amy Pascal, and David Heyman would sign for something that wasn't going to be good. They can't cast an American. That would be insane. It must be a Brit. All right, one more story and then we'll do the Q&A. Okay. Sorry, my eyes are bothering me a little bit. The air is just very thick. Woo! Okay. All right. Final boop. Boom, baby. So I saw a nice little headline yesterday and I was like, I must include this in the next live stream. So, have you ever heard of something called Cosm Theaters? You're about to, because this is a big deal. So, as we discuss on Movie Math every Sunday, movies are becoming more and more about creating an event. So if a theater can make it feel like more of an event, that's what a lot of people are going to pick, which is why premium screens are doing so well. IMAX, Dolby, etc. So here comes Cosm, which is just the ultimate in event experiences. So concerts and also movie theater spaces are starting to be used for more things than just movies. Like concerts, Taylor Swift really helped to push that. And also potentially sports, what a great way to watch a game. But I think that, while concerts have found their way into the theatrical space, sports are still having a bit of a problem, except at Cosm Immersive Theaters. So I believe Cosm started out as the technology to do this kind of projection, but then they just started to open their own theaters. So they have only 3 cities right now: Dallas, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. But what they basically have here is like the Sphere in Las Vegas, but right where you are. So I'll show you some pictures here so you can see what they're doing. This is Willy Wonka in the Cosm Theater. So you have your screen, and look, you get to sit in a booth, right? Look at this. You get to sit in a booth. They have different types of tables. You have your own private table. It's like being at a Vegas show. You know how all the tables face the stage, but it's really cool. Then you can see they've built out the scene with the space. So you have the screen, but then they recreate the room and expand it, right? So that's like the Sphere does. And it's supposed to be a way to add to the experience. So that's for Willy Wonka. And they're also doing Harry Potter and the Matrix. And as you can see, they have a deal with Warner Brothers and Cirque du Soleil. All right. You might think this looks awful, but I was checking to find the prices. You can't get a ticket to see the Harry Potter experience at the Los Angeles Theater until late August. That's sold out, every other seat, right? Alberto, your friend went there. I hope they had a good time. All right, so then they also are very big on sports. And here they are with sports. Here they are for a sporting event. And you can see they are able to make it seem like you're in a daylit, skylit room, like you're in the stadium. You can see that's how, just to give you an idea. There's the seats looking at the game. And I think this is done very well for sports. In fact, it's done so well for sports, they're able to significantly upcharge for that. So if you're wondering, how much does this cost? It's $60 a person for a movie, but you have to buy as a group. You have to buy how many people are sitting at your table. And they have 2 tops, 4 tops, 6 tops. So it's $60 for the movie experience. But if you want to go to like one of the FIFA games, for instance, it's $400 a person. That's insane. That's insane. And yes, Atmosphere, they do change the larger setting for every scene to expand it. So that's incredible. The fact that they can charge that. A friend of mine who lives in Los Angeles got sent something about the Knicks finals, and they wanted $500 a seat. And so my friend was like, no, thank you. But I mean, I don't know. I think it's a cool experience. Maybe it's something you might consider a couple of times. So that's pretty neat. And I'd have to see if food was included in that, food and drink, then that's not a bad deal. So the reason it's in the news, though, is that Sony just decided to invest in this. So Sony bought a large stake and is going to give it an influx of cash. Now, of course, why is Sony buying so many movie spaces? They, of course, also bought Alamo Drafthouse, but then, of course, they did a poor job with Alamo Drafthouse. I think people are very upset with the way the changes are going around there. But I think it's interesting that Sony would buy this as well. For instance, when they had their State of Play, they said you could watch it at Alamo Drafthouse. But what if you could watch it at Cosm? What if, I mean, State of Play wasn't very well received this year, but what if it was a better experience? Maybe you would want to maybe go and do this. And it does make me wonder with Sony's involvement if perhaps they're going to build more of these, right? And try to have them in every major city. And maybe they're thinking this is a way to challenge IMAX supremacy, that you could have new movies playing here just like they do in IMAX. So I think very much this is the future of theaters. I think it's going to do extremely well. And I think you're probably not too far off from them being in every major theater, which is pretty exciting. So I can't wait. I think it's great. And I think it's really great for the movie business. All right, any questions about this before we do our 10 minutes? Mystic, I don't think for $60, I think it's not supposed to be something you do every weekend. It's supposed to be something special. Joe says, do you think this will compete well with AMC X screens? I'm not sure what an AMC X screen is. Is that what it has the whole thing? I mean, I think it's probably much more expensive. And this is more of a dinner and a movie. Like there's waiter service. You know, they take it very seriously. Oh, well, that's funny. Andrew says, so if you feel like you're at home, what's the behavior like in a space like this? That's an excellent question. Well, for a sporting event, you don't mind, right? For a movie, I mean, you paid $60 a person to get in there. So hopefully you take it a little bit more seriously, right? Also, you are separated by your booth. So you wouldn't see somebody else. And it's slanted. So it's like if you look at the picture here for the sports, you know, it's such a steep slant, you really wouldn't have a problem with sight lines, I don't think. You know, no one's really going to be able to bother you that much. Oh, KO, you went and you said the behavior was pretty good. That's good. Amara says, I find it hard to believe we can get a large number of these up and running. Not a large number. It might be one per city. You know, like there's a couple of IMAX and Dolby screens in any city, you know, or any metropolitan area. There's a handful of them, you know. Certainly a couple of IMAXs, even if they're baby IMAXs. But with these, I think that you could probably only have one per city. I think in New York, you could probably have two. I don't know why it's not New York either, Mystic. I'm upset. Like, imagine booking this for Taylor Swift. I think a lot of people would do it. Like the Michael Jackson movie? I mean, that would be incredible. The problem with building more IMAX is that IMAXs aren't standalone theaters. So a movie theater company has to agree to do that. That's the problem that you have. These are individuals. They're their own standalone buildings. Like they build a building. Maybe the real estate is the issue in New York City. So maybe they might have to build it in New Jersey. Yeah, there should be one in Chicago. There should be one in somewhere in Florida, probably in Orlando and Miami. Hashtag, I didn't see your super chat. Let me go back and see. Oh, Muma says, what movie do you think would be great for the Sphere? Well, I hear the Wizard of Oz experience is pretty incredible. It's made so much money for them. Hashtag Pie says, I kind of want Tom Francis from Sunset Boulevard in the musical with Michelle Lee. Oh, you want, that's not even the story that we're on. All right, but I appreciate your enthusiasm. All right, let's get on to the top. Let's get on to Ask Me Anything for 10 minutes. All right. Ask me anything. Theater Kid, I'm jealous. I want to go to Sphere someday. Danny, I haven't been watching the World's Cup, but I'm keeping an eye on it in social media. Swifty says, Grace, Supergirl's budget was 175. I read today that Warner Brothers would be happy with 300. I think they're just, I don't even know if it's going to make 300, to be honest with you. But I mean, we'll talk about that on Movie Math when we see what the first numbers are. But I think that's just damage control. Kyle says, care to comment on those recent Daredevil Born Again season 3 set photos? Yeah, I saw it. I saw that Elektra was there. I think I'm really upset with the on-set photos. I think they're just totally ruining it with all the surprises. Thank you, Winterfang. That's very sweet of you. Deck Officer, I did like Sasha Calle as Supergirl in The Flash. I thought she did a very nice job. Theater Kid, I can't tell you my favorite movie of the year so far, but pretty soon I'll be doing my top 10 lists for the year. That's right, Carlos. People, that's ironic. Future kids watching Toy Story 5 on the iPad. Hashtag, you think Tom Francis would be good because he's relatively new? I'll have to look him up. I'm not familiar with him. Drape says, Grace, Cosm Theaters could open in every city during sporting events and would make a killing. Oh, for sure. I definitely think I'm very much in favor of them. I think they're really great. Yeah, Dory, I think you thought House of the Dragon episode 1 was nuts. Wait till you see episode 2. Rodney, I was going to review Avatar season 2. I wrote a review, I filmed a review, but I just didn't have time to edit it. I'm sorry to say. I liked it, but it doesn't seem to be well received. Thanks, Swifty. Let's see here. Bianca, what is your favorite Studio Ghibli animated movie? Yours is Spirited Away. I like the one about the airplane inventor. or something like that. I thought that was pretty good. I liked that one. Mystic says, will Moana tank like Supergirl? Well, again, we don't know if Supergirl's going to tank. We got to wait till we actually see the numbers. We'll have a good idea tomorrow. Um, mm, I don't know. I don't know. I think people like beachy, fun movies, but let's see what happens. Emmanuel says Avengers Endgame adding Encore to the title disqualifiers to take. Well, I think Avatar's fudged the numbers a little bit too, right? But I don't know if they'll be able to beat Avatar. Let's see. Thank you, Alog. And by the way, I forgot who asked there. Oh, Juan Gabriel. I haven't seen The Odyssey yet. My review for that might be a little bit late. I'm just warning you now. I have a conflict the night that they're probably going to do the press screening. So it's not looking good for me reviewing that when the embargo lifts. Deck Officer says, do you play any sports? I used to play basketball. I liked it quite a bit. Mystic, I probably won't review Moana or Evil Dead. I'm sorry to say. I'm very busy that weekend. It's the whole reason I can't. I have a personal conflict, and that's the same reason I can't make probably the Odyssey press screening. But, you know, it's a big family thing. So there's just nothing I can do about it. How tall am I, Swifty? I'm 5'6". I'm a tiny little person. Let's see here. Oh, Fahad, I was able to cover Superman last year because I got into an early screening. Oh, thanks, Jesus. I appreciated everyone's kind comments about my Supergirl sweatshirt. That meant a lot. For any of you guys wondering about press screenings, they're typically the week of release or maybe like the end of the week before, but they're usually the week of release for all media screenings. Fahad, I don't know if I'm going to have a big dinner tonight. I'm going to try and stay eating light because I'm going into the weekend and I want to be able to have fun on the weekend. Oh, hashtag Pisces, do you think we might get some X-Men casting announcements, or at least some of them, at San Diego Comic-Con this year, or D23? We might. I think that's very possible. But, you know, X-Men are still a little bit of a ways off. I think before we get casting announcements, we'll probably get a release date. Ooh, Lucas says, favorite New York City steakhouse. Mastro's is pretty good. For my birthday, I ate at the one at Grand Central, Palladino's. I really liked being there. There's a lot of really good steakhouses in New York City. Sahib says, Magic School Bus thoughts, Grace. I think anyone but Elizabeth Banks, to be honest with you. I think she's really going to kill that. Yeah, Mystic, I'll do a Comic-Con preview on a live stream probably. Oh, thanks, Adam Sphere. Thanks, DJG. Welcome back. All right, we got 2 minutes left on the questions, and then I must go. You guys are making me think maybe I should go over to Panera. Zay, I'm sorry I won't be able to make fun of The Rock's wig. I think I did a pretty good job when I reacted to the trailer. Benjamin, I'm looking forward to Practical Magic too. I think that'll be fun. I don't know if it's going to be a huge hit. I don't think it's going to be Devil Wears Prada 2 level, but I think it'll be nice. Oh, I've had the salad stuffer, Degai Tai. The Panera Bread salad stuffer is amazing. Strong recommend. You're pretty good there, Mystic. There probably will not be a movie math for Moana either. I'm sorry to say. But there will be a movie math for Supergirl and a movie math for Minions and all kinds of stuff. Rodney, did I have any McDonald's this week? I have not. I got to try and be healthy. Amara says, Indy Navarrete is doing well gaming on Twitch and YouTube right now. Do you think this is wise for her career? Well, I also saw her at the Jackass premiere. I think she's certainly going in a very specific direction. And if that's the direction she wants to take her career, that's great, you know? But I think it might cost her some other roles potentially. But I also, you know, she said she's been having a tough time, that she hasn't been able to book any work since she filmed Obsession, which was 1.5 years ago. So I think she just wants to make some money, and I don't blame her. And hashtag Pie says that you hope that Moana tanks so that Tangled is significantly changed. Well, you have, I would be surprised that Michael Gracie would mess that up. I think he's really a good director. Oh, Ben, oh, it's really hot in France. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm glad we could help distract you. And happy Pride Month to you too, Car Jams. I will not be attending the parade on Sunday, though, because I'll be making movie math and working on House of the Dragon. Bianca, I didn't like the trailer for The Social Reckoning. It seemed like it was not very cinematic. It seemed like they had, it seemed to me like they had staged it like a play, like a stage play. Antoine, let me see if I can find your super chat. I'm sorry I missed it. Oh, it's gone. Okay. I'm going to watch and look, and you say it again and just regular, and I will read it. Just Blaze Disney, I'm afraid I disagree when it comes to Grand Theft Auto. I think that's a different situation. Oh, that's sweet, Swifty. That's very sweet of you. All right, I'm looking. Who was it? Antoine, I'm looking. Just enter your comment now. And then I must go. But I'm waiting for Antoine. Type like the wind, Antoine. Hey, always. Mexican Nacho. Yes, I'd say all 4 episodes that I've seen of House of the Dragon are excellent. You don't think he'd write it? He doesn't have to super chat it. Antoine, you don't have to super chat it. You just have to rewrite it. Oh, my pleasure, Mexican Nacho. It's always so nice to see you. Oh, he was disappointed? Oh, now I'm sad. If you do a super chat too early, you know, it's a risk that I won't see it and it'll get lost. Antoine, I'll give you another moment and then I must go. I'm glad you enjoyed the stream, Mystic. Kyle, snack for Supergirl? Oh, you forgot what it was, Antoine? I'm sorry. They don't save all the super chats. But here, I'll give you a heart, Antoine. Mwah. I'm sorry that happened. I think for Supergirl, I don't know. Maybe sour gummies because she's in such a bad mood. Or nachos. I always enjoy nachos. All right, everybody. I had a wonderful time talking to you as always, and there will be a live stream tomorrow. There will definitely be a live stream tomorrow, and it'll be earlier in the day. All right, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye-bye. Supergirl spoiler review will be going up this evening. Okay, bye.